I wasn't looking for anyone. Interest. I wasn't wanting to talk. No flirting, no company. I just wanted to disappear by 2 hours in a French movie that no one else wanted to see. No heroes, explosions, or romantic comedy with happy ending. Just silence, whispered dialogues, and sad people smoking on balconies. It was all I wanted that cold night in Chicago. The city was freezing. That kind of cold that makes us shrink inside our own coat and walk fast, as if the wind could steal some part of yours if it took too long on the sidewalk. When I entered the Clark Street Cinema, I already knew the path of eyes closed. Almost no one attended that place. It was old, smelled of burnt popcorn and nostalgia, and it was perfect. I bought a ticket. I didn't even look at the right session. I entered. The room was a little empty, as I expected. I chose the bottom, my usual safe corner, the middle armchair of the last row, place of those who do not want to be noted, who hides behind the initial credits. I sat down, took off the scarf, and let out the air very slowly, ready to turn off. Only, she arrived. Do you know when you feel someone before you see? When does the air change? It was like that. The door made that boring creak, and she entered. A long red jacket that hit the knee height. Loose, half wavy, half messy hair, and a floor that seemed not to apologize to anyone. She came straight to the bottom, for my side. Of all the empty armchairs in that cold room, she chose the one that leaned against mine. I almost rolled my eyes. I thought, really? But then she sat, and when she sat, it was as if time made a discreet noise, like click, the sound that things do when they change without you realize. She straightened her bag, picked up a handful of popcorn, crossed her legs, and her knee touched the side of mine. You didn't even look at me, but I couldn't look forward anymore. There was something about her, something electric, half dangerous, half hypnotic. The perfume was woody, different, and stuck to me as if I said, I was here before you arrived. Her hair brushed my arm every time she moved, and that little touch, it was too much for those who just wanted to hide. I took a deep breath. I tried to focus on the movie. Caption, low lines, a couple arguing in a kitchen in Paris, but everything sounded away. My whole body was already on alert, as if I knew something was going to happen. I just didn't know what. Until it happened. It was subtle. A slow movement. The side of her hand slipping down the seat until I touched my knee. First light. As an accident. But then, she didn't get it. The hand got, and I locked. My body froze. But inside it seemed that 1,000 bonfires had lit at the same time. I felt my stomach turn, my throat close. The screen in front of me became blur. The sound of the movie disappeared. All I could feel was the touch of her skin on mine. That's when I realized I could pretend to be there because of the cinema. I could say it was just a coincidence. But deep down, there was a part of me that had been waiting for it for a long, long time. And that part now trembled. That crossed me. Her voice. It wasn't just beautiful. It was intimate, severe, hot, like a secret counted at dawn. A whisper that seemed to know exactly where it hurt. When those words touched me, I felt the floor disappear for a moment. I turned my face slowly, as if I was afraid of what I was going to find. And I found it. She looked at me, not like who wants something, but as who already knows. As those who waited for the right time to appear. Her eyes were really of storm, not by the cliché, but because that's what I felt. As if something huge were about to fall upon me. I should have said something. Anything. Rito made joke, pretended that I did not understand, but my throat crashed. My body didn't answer. Only the skin burning where her hand was still playing with a new firmness, as who says, I know you feel too. That's when everything around it disappeared. The dark room disappeared. The film's trail, the dialogues in French, the noise of the few people ahead. Everything became white noise. I just heard her breathe. I only felt the warmth of her presence glued to me without invading, but also without license. And I thought, what is happening to me? Because it wasn't just horny. It wasn't just the shiver in the knee. It was a feeling of being seen, in truth, as if someone had put a mirror inside me and say, do you remember that? This part of you that you pretended forgot? And the answer was yes. I remembered, even without knowing. She pushed her hand for a second, just to come back more firmly. Now it was no longer a touch of curiosity. It was a gesture of those who take control of a tension that already existed before the first contact, as if she was continuing a conversation I didn't remember to have started. My body reacted before me. The skin shiver, The breath failed. I felt ridiculous to be so vulnerable, but at the same time, so alive. And then, in the dark of that room, I wished something that was a long time ago that I didn't want, being taken. Not in the literal sense, but taken out of me. Far from the routine, the fear, the walls I built myself. It was crazy. Of course it was. A stranger touching me in the movies, staring at me as if I knew me, reading me like a book she has already decorated. But something about me, I trusted. It made no sense, I know, but I trusted. I stayed there, immovable on the outside, but boiling inside, thinking if that was real, if I was dreaming, if it was going to end in seconds, thinking about how much I wanted to turn to her and ask, why me? Why now? Did you see me before? Did you feel from far away? But I didn't ask, because part of me already knew, maybe not with words, but with the body, with silence, with the memory of a touch that was not just touch. It was a souvenir. It was reunion. It was as if an invisible rope had pulled the air from my chest. She said low, firmly, and got up without hesitation, as if she had already decided everything to both of us. The movie wasn't over yet, but for me it didn't matter anymore. The story on the screen was just the background for another story that had started there, and now dragged me out of the armchair. Before leaving, she turned her face over her shoulder and threw me that look, that one who did not ask, did not beg, just ordered, without violence, without arrogance, but with a certainty that disarmed. I stayed there, frozen, trying to understand what had just happened to me, trying to decide if I was crazy to follow a woman I didn't even know the name, or if I was too coward not to follow. The lights came on slowly. The room began to fill with normal noises, people taking a coat, coughing, dragging their feet over packets of crumpled popcorn. But I was still in the dark. The tap in my knee still pulsed like an echo, as if my whole body shouted, "Go!" And I went. I got up slowly, with my legs soft, almost tripping over my own thoughts. I left the room like a threshold, as those who leave behind a version of yourself that no longer serves. She was out there, at the side of the cinema, leaning against an old iron railing, the wind messing up her hair. I smoked with difficulty. The lighter went out all the time, and the cigarette was barely lighting, but she didn't seem to care. Saw me, smiled, that short smile, with a corner of the mouth, and it was straightforward. "Do you live alone?" It was not any question. I had no joke. It was straightforward, dry as needed to know before taking the next step. And I lied. I don't know why. Or rather, I know. Because telling the truth would mean retreating. It would mean putting a but where my body wanted a yes. I live. She released the smoke in half. Excellent. He threw the batuka out, stepped on top, and started walking. Simple as that. In the opposite direction of my house. As if you knew. As if I was absolutely sure that I was going to follow. And I followed. I didn't ask where we were going. I didn't ask for explanations. I just let my legs obey what the rest of me had already decided even before leaving the movie armchair. And at that moment, walking through the empty streets of Chicago, with the lights of the posts throwing long shadows on the asphalt, I felt something that was a long time ago I didn't feel. Fear. But it was not fear of her. It was fear of me, than I was able to do when someone really touched me. When someone looked at me with that absurd courage of those who don't want to conquer you, just recognize you. My heart beat so loud that I thought she was going to hear. The sweaty hands inside the pocket of the coat, the cold cutting my face, but inside, I boiled, because I didn't know where she took me. I just knew I wanted to go, that needed to go. And deep down, very deep, I already knew. Tonight was not about meeting someone. It was about remembering something I spent years trying to forget. And now it was too late to go back. When she opened the door, it was like opening a place out of time. Those peeled walls, the old wooden floor grinding under our steps, and the books, had books everywhere, stacking on the floor, in the window, in open boxes as if she had tried to organize them and give up in the middle, and yet everything made sense. It was disorganized but cozy. As someone who refuses to hide who is to fit what they expect, the light came weak from an old lamp, and the jazz that began to play badly was heard. It was almost just a vibration in the air. That place seemed a secret. And somehow, I felt it wasn't anyone he received. She took off her coat slowly, not to impress, not to tease me, but with a naturalness that only those who have dominance of their own body can have. Every gesture of her seemed to be at home, on the body, in space, in me, and I was still stopped at the door, statue, with her hands not knowing where to stay, the heart glued to the sky of her mouth, and a million thoughts running at the same time, trying to understand if I was really there, if that was real. That's when she came to me. He didn't ask if he could, did not hesitate, just came. He stopped in front of me and, with a disconcerting calm, leaned against the wall. Not hard, but with the exact firmness of who knows that you don't have to push someone to surrender. So, she kissed me. Time stopped there. It was a kiss without urgency, but full of hunger contained. A kiss that didn't want to rush anything. I wanted to prove it. She held me around the waist as if trying to keep me anchored at that moment. As if she knew that if she let go, I would run away. Or would collapse. Or both. And maybe I really collapsed. Because the moment our lips touched, everything I had been avoiding years ago appeared at once. Desire. Fear. I missed something I didn't even know I missed. I kissed back with all this. With delivery, but with fright. With desire, but with the feeling that it could open wounds that I had already buried. It was good. It was intense. And it was dangerous. When she pushed her lips, the whisper came. You have no idea how much I waited. I froze. That was not a phrase of effect. It was not charm. There was a weight there. I had history. My whole body My eyes sought hers as if they sought a warning, an explanation, anything that told me what exactly was happening. And I asked, my voice scratching in my throat, "Do you know me?" She did not respond with words. It only ran my fingers lightly on my face, as looking for a forgotten trace, as one who confirms an old suspicion, as who recognizes. It was a simple gesture, but it dismantled me. Because there, in that room that looked more like a hidden shelter from the rest of the world, a part of me began to understand. This story had not started that night. I had started before. I just didn't know how much. We still had the bodies glued, the kiss echoing on the lips, the jazz filling the corners of the room like smoke. But the climate has changed. Not suddenly, but as if you close a window gradually when it starts to rain. She walked away slowly, took a bottle of red wine on a low shelf, and guided me to the couch. He sat like he had done that 1,000 times. Not with me, but with that memory she carried. I offered me a cup, and I picked up with hands still shaking. The wine was dry, strong, but that was not what burned. It was what came later. She looked at me with a disconcerting calm, as if everything you had to say were already decided, as if she had rehearsed that moment for years. And then she started talking, of a school in Denver, of wide corridors and blue lockers, of muffled summers and snacks in the stands, and from a girl she described in so much detail that for a moment I thought it was fiction. Hair stuck in a sloppy bun, distracted look, always on the back of the literature room. This girl was me, but I didn't remember her. I was the girl with the colorful notebooks, the one that sat 2 rows behind you, she said, with a sad smile. And then came the part that dismantled everything. She spoke of a specific summer, from a day when I entered the locker room after the sweaty physical education class, laughing with a friend, and looked at her. Just that. A look. But, according to her, that look became the world. You looked at me as who sees, not like who sees everyone, as who really sees. And I spent years trying to forget that moment. She paused. He looked at the glass, took another sip. It was the first time I doubted if the world was really as they said it was, because in that second, I wanted something I couldn't say aloud. My chest squeezed. I didn't remember. I swear I didn't remember. But her words, the tone of her voice, the way she spoke of me as if she had kept me all her life, all that crossed me hard. I cried, silently, at first. Only the wet eyes, the tight throat. But when she said she spent years trying to erase this feeling, trying to convince herself that it was just a phase, a silly, and that yet I could never forget, I got off, because somehow I recognized it all. Not the memories, but the sensation, the feeling of hiding parts of yours so deep that one day you begin to believe that they never existed. And then she did it again. He leaned his hand on my knee, equal in the cinema. Same pressure, even firm touch, loaded with all that has not been said. And he looked at me deep, with his eyes full of something I couldn't name, hurt, maybe, or longing, and asked, "And now? Will you still pretend you don't feel anything?" That question tore me. because it was the question I asked myself so many times. In silence, in other bodies, on nights that ended the pillow wet. It was the question I never had the courage to answer. And now there, with her in front of me, I had nowhere to run away. That night was not about a sudden passion. It was about a reunion with my part that I buried when I was a teenager, when it was too dangerous to like, feel, want. And now she was there, alive, embodied in a woman who looked at me like a chance, but doesn't beg, as perhaps the value of what it carries, and only offers. If it were you, would you risk losing everything to live a maybe? Because at that moment, I didn't know what to answer.